Good morning. If we could get settled so we can get started. Oh, you guys settled fast. That was good. I know a lot of people are still coming in, so I want to give them a chance to sit down. And people who don't have a chance to sign in now or pick up packets can certainly do it at the end of the meeting. So we ask you to sign in just because we'll, of course, send you a survey. So it's so much fun to ask what else we could possibly do to make this, if we could do something else. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to senior year. I'm Cindy Rivera. I'm the department chair for the guidance counselors here, the school counselors. So let me introduce everyone. I'll probably forget people's names. This is what it is. So this is Linda McGann, Ann Vernon, Lori Keene, Susan Lency, Nick Willett, Susan Carroll, who's College and Career Center, and in the back we have Jane Mitchell and Kelly Tamburino. I think I got everybody. And then Mr. Bill Egan, our principal, over there. So this, for some reason, life is happening faster and faster for me, so I feel like I was just talking to you about finding, room 232 down the hall when you came in here from 8th grade orientation. So I'm sure it feels like that to you as well. Today, we're going to just talk to you about next steps for your kids. Most of this will be about college applications and admissions, but we do know some kids are going to be choosing to do other things, whether they're taking a gap year, go into the military, take some time off to work. All of those options are things we are glad to talk with you and your child about, and probably know who those kids are already. But for today, it will be mostly about the college admissions process and what's going on there. As you've probably figured out by now, how many people here, this is their first time through? Oh dear, okay. How many have more than one child who will be going through this at some time in your life? Okay, so as you know, your children are kind of different from each other. No two kids are alike. And we see our seniors that way. No two seniors are alike. And so the process is going to be different for every one of them. This is the hardest message to get across because, as you know, everybody listens to everyone else. And you feel like you're behind on something, or they're behind on something, they should be here and they shouldn't be there. And so it's a nerve-wracking kind of time for everybody. But we know that each child chooses their own path. Often it's not the path you're choosing for them. And they have their own timelines, which again is often not your timeline. So we understand that. We understand everyone's in a different place, and we're okay with that. Some kids have, are ready to hit submit, did all their applications over the summer, have their essays done, and they're just waiting for us to get things going. That's the minority of students. Most students are somewhere in the process of finishing up essays, starting their Common App, maybe asking teachers for recommendations, maybe we'll get to it next week. So it's all over the place. And wherever they are, that's where we start, and that's where we'll take them. And it'll all be okay, and we're here to tell you it will work out. And it works out every year. We have a lot of experience here. We've worked with probably collectively thousands of students at this point going through this process. So it will be okay. So in the last week, counselors have already gone into all the senior English classes, and I think maybe we're finishing up with a couple more today and tomorrow. Are we done? We're done. Okay, so and so we've talked to all the kids about a lot of information, about ordering transcripts, about linking their Naviance and Common App accounts, how to ask teachers for recommendations, how to get that in Naviance. So we've given them a lot of information, a lot of advice on meeting deadlines and staying organized. It was probably overwhelming for them. It was a lot of information because we had one period we wanted to get going. So we've ratcheted up their anxiety that they were feeling already. So now is the time to try to bring it back down and see what we can do. So that said, how much they heard and retained is always the question. So you are our backup plan to come in and be our partners in this and helping them to get it done. So today we'll give you a brief overview of the information that we gave the kids and answer questions you may have. And moving forward, deadlines are important now. There's no extensions in college admissions. They're deadlines. Counselors will be reviewing their list of colleges with your children and discussing additional college if they need to add anything. We'll be looking at first quarter grades and advising them as to whether it's important to send them or not. So it's a process. We'll get there. 94% of our seniors last year said that they were satisfied with their college admissions outcome. So keep that in mind. It will be okay. Right? We'll have you just dive in at this point. So let's look at what we're doing here. I think we're going to start with Linda and Lori. They will begin by telling you about what we've talked to the kids in the English classes. Sue Carroll will talk to you about what's available in the College and Career Center, about all those college rep visits that are coming. Sue Lancey will come back and talk to you about what you as parents can do, and then we'll take questions and answers. Okay, questions?
Technology here. They're very important. Well, good morning. Just as Cindy said, we've already been into all of the senior English classes and admission season has begun. This season, in the classes, your kids were terrific, better than ever. They were engaged, they asked fantastic questions, they were super attentive. I was really happy how the classes went. But we know that you have some questions as well. There are so many moving parts to the application process. So you, just like us, we want to make sure that everything gets done. We want everything to be accurate. And so we're going to share some of the key elements that we've told the seniors as they work their way through the process. So STARS. We have this very simplistic graphic organizer and catchy phrase as a way to bring you all some clarity to the process. You can see the student is juggling different pieces at the same time, and that's really a good description of the process and a good description of what this fall is going to look like. They're not only juggling their academics, hopefully they're engaged in extracurricular activities and applying to college. It can be a little overwhelming, but they do always get through it, and we're here to help. And eventually, as we told the seniors, all of the balls will be stopped juggling at one point towards the end of this. So let's talk about the first S, senior appointments. These are one-on-one appointments just with the counselor and the student, and it's really tailored to wherever your child is at in the process. It's an opportunity for us to talk to them one-on-one about their plans. Just as Cindy said, be it college, gap year, PG, work, every meeting is tailored where each student is at. During these individual meetings, we'll be discussing the pink sheet, the senior profile. Hopefully this all looks familiar. It was sent home with the summer mailings. If your child doesn't have it, they could ask Mrs. Pocha when they schedule their senior appointment, and it could also be found online. There's a link on our homepage under senior forms. This information is required, and it's also so helpful when we write your child's letter of recommendation. So please double check that they've completed the senior profile. In the summer mailing, you also received a parent questionnaire. We love receiving these. It's so helpful. It really provides us with additional information that your child may have forgotten to write about, or they may be too humble to put it down, and we really enjoy reading them. Excuse me. And we also encourage, there's such beautiful things written about your son or daughter, and a lot of times you forget to share it with them. Please share it with your child. It's just amazing for them to see as well. During the senior appointment, we also review the student's college list. We want to hear what they're thinking about. When we check their list to make sure that it's very balanced, we want students to make sure that they have schools that are reaches, that are difficult to get into, that are below the standardized test score and GPA. We want to make sure they have a couple targets, which is 50-50, right on target with the average. And also favorables. Those are students with their GPA, standardized test scores that are above that college's accepted average, and that they'll most likely be admitted to that school. Another fantastic service that we have on top of just reviewing the individual list with the counselors individually, in November and December, we sit down as a collective group and we share students without their names. We talk about their college lists, and the only information that we have is just their GPA and standardized test score. With this review, we want to make sure that the students have a couple of favorables on the list, because we want to make sure that a child will get into at least one of their schools on the list. So we sit down, we review, we mail a letter home, either saying, yes, terrific list, or perhaps add a couple of schools. We do this because it allows both the students, parents, and counselors to feel comfortable that they're going to get into at least one school on the list. So we really enjoy this process as a team. At the meetings, we also discuss the details of the application process. We also talk about any further standardized testing that may be needed, and we check in with where they're at in this process. If your son or daughter has an early deadline, please encourage them to get in, schedule that senior appointment, and to also let Mrs. Pocher know that they have an early deadline. And we do ask that this meeting occurs about 3 to 4 weeks before the first deadline, but we for sure are flexible with that, just communication is key. And please be assured, this is not the only one meeting that we have with your child this fall. We meet them at whatever point they're at. That senior meeting is just the first kickoff meeting, and we're here for them literally every step of the way with whatever they need. Your children are priorities this fall for sure. And now the next.
Perfect. Okay, T is for transcripts. So a transcript, if you are not familiar with that term, is an official document of what your student has accomplished here at New Canaan High School. It lists all of the students' classes from freshman year, the grades by semester, it gives the GPA, and it gives also the credit. This is the official document that we send from New Canaan High School to their colleges. There's a process that they need to do to order those transcripts that are sent from our school. We've already shown the students the form they need to fill out. We have a registrar who is Lisa Granite. Some of you may be familiar with her. She will send thousands of transcripts out. So we've all asked the students to be very polite and thoughtful about this process because it is such a volume that we send out. Every day from 7:30 to 2:15, they can come and order their transcripts in the office. It is a process that needs to take place in the office. The form doesn't leave the office. So they need to be prepared during a free period or during lunch to come and actually fill it out. It's really important that they do it. We've had some parents that have filled it out in the past and there's been some errors in it, so we encourage you that that's something that you can help them get prepared to do, remind them to do, but it's something that they would really, should really do. And they need to come prepared to know what their school is. If there's a branch, let's say they're going to UConn and they want stores. If they don't put stores, it might go to Stanford, so we want to make sure that they have all that information. We would like them to have 3 to 4 weeks prior to their first deadline. So if any of your students are going early action or early decision and they have a November 1st or November 15th deadline, they probably should come by the first week in October to see Mrs. Granite, okay? And so as they're thinking about their list, they don't need to put every school that they're thinking about on that list. The ones that they're definite about, the ones that they know, particularly if they have early deadlines or they're confident they're going to be applying there, they can go and fill that out. That's a form that kids will come back to over and over again and add to it. So if they're just putting one school on there, it starts the process. And what happens is, that form is given to counselors. It starts our process. We write our letters of recommendation after we've had the senior appointment, and then the transcript package is sent. What's in that package? The official transcript, the letter of recommendation from all of us, the secondary school report, and our school profile, which is a a document that gives information about New Canaan High School. So when admissions people are reading your student's transcript, they have that by their side so they know, it puts it in context, what type of school we are, what our SAT scores are, what our AP availability is, you know, where our students fall in the range, okay? The first quarter grades that Cindy Rivera was mentioning, those are not sent automatically. This is something that you can help remind your students about also. At the end of first quarter, a student can look and say, oh, I did so great, I need these sent to my school. There's going to be a process, we'll announce it 5 times. They need to come down and fill out a form and send them to their schools. Some schools will require first quarter grades, many do not, but if a student does well, we encourage them to send them. Okay, applications. So I imagine that you've heard the term common application. That is one application that can be filled out for, is it 7? It must be 700 schools now. So most of your students are going to fill out the common application. There are some applications that are just for the school themselves. They aren't on Common App, so they may be filling out a separate application for a school. There are also some schools that are filling out the coalition application. You may have heard of that. There's very few schools, I believe it's University of Maryland and University of Florida, that are only going coalition. If your student has questions about that, that's what we're here for. But most of you will fill out, most of them will fill out the common application. It is a very detailed application. And it may be the first time that students are really saying, I've got to pay attention to checking the box and looking. And what we found and what you'll find is that you will press a button and things are revealed. So you want to make sure that they press every button so that they can see what is actually happening. We've advised students to really not wait. If the deadline is November 15th, November 14th is not the day to apply. We have had weather, we have had servers go down on the college point, not from ours, from colleges. It's really good to do at least 1 week ahead to push that button. Okay, so it's all a very orderly process. Because what happens is sometimes they will push the button and then something will show up red on the Common App that they didn't fill out. Like they didn't fill out a writing supplement and it's 10 minutes before the deadline. Well, there's no way they're going to get that done. So we want them to be orderly in that whole process. They will write one main essay, which is 650 words, the main essay. And as we spoke about, it should be very authentic in their own voice, telling the admissions people something that their grades and their SAT scores, beyond that, who is this individual, brings that person to life through the admissions process. Okay? We welcome all the school counselors. We welcome that the students share them with us. We will look at them not, I can't speak for anybody. I'm really not an English major, so I'm not looking at it really for grammar. I am really, what we're looking at it is, does it have the right tone? Is it, sometimes students try to be funny and it falls flat. Is it a negative tone? Is it highlighting the student in the best light? That's what we're looking for. And we will be honest with them. Sometimes it's hard for them to hear that because they feel they spent a lot of time looking at that, but we will be really honest because we're only here to help them in the process. There are things known as supplements. So there are also questions and supplements usually are subject areas that are relative to the school, like why would you like to come to Providence College? What does Syracuse mean to you? Those kind of things. We have in our extensive travels through college admissions, colleges and admissions people, they pay a lot of attention to those supplements. They're hard to write because they're only 250 words. It's only a couple of sentences, but they really do pay attention very carefully to those. So plot those out with your student. If they have 10 supplements to write, have them write them, you know, one a week or a couple of weeks, because it's really hard to wait to the end to do those, okay? If anything is optional, it's not optional, okay? We really encourage them to say optional means really, they're looking for something when they're saying that. And it just is a nice way to see if the college will say, oh, this is a good fit. This student will fit well on our campus. It's another opportunity for them, for kids to say that. Okay? If your child is applying under an early decision and early action, so they have a November 1st or November 15th deadline, we will work with them, and you should encourage them to have that separate list also in the event, hopefully not, but if it does happen that they do not gain admission to their early decision school or they're deferred to the regular decision, what you don't want to have is it's the, you know, last week in December and they need to start figuring out what school it's going to be and filling out those applications. It's really important that they work on them a little as they go along. It's your choice whether they send them in and pay the money, but certainly they should be ready to go. If they gained admission to early decision, hooray, nothing lost. Okay. And we have given a handout, the life cycle of an app. If you have not got that it will highlight for you what happens after you hit submit, what happens after that. R is for recommendation. There's several different types of recommendation. We have encouraged our students since last year to be asking 2 academic teachers to write letters of recommendation for them. Hopefully that has happened. We've also encouraged them, if they've only, let's say they could only think of 1 and they really need help with another, to come see us. We will brainstorm and figure out who that person should be. Counselors will, teachers will write from the point of view of the classroom. How did the student interact with other students? Content knowledge. Were they a good citizen in that community? What was their participation level? And they'll put that student in context with other students. Wonderful, insightful, thoughtful commentary or something like that. It'll be very anecdotal, and I would say all of our teachers, if they agree to write for your student, are going to write really beautifully and positively for them. So rest assured about that. We've told them how to take care of that in Naviance. You can ask them. There was a booklet we also gave them. And then we have, one more thing about that. Have them write thank you notes to those teachers. The teachers, I know many of the teachers wrote over the summer. They take their own time to do this. They write beautiful letters. They, particularly English teachers, I think they're doing double duty in the fall now. It's really nice that the student circles back and writes a thank you note. It's really shows respect for that process. Counselors, we've started the process of writing. As soon as we have the senior appointment with the student, we will write the letter of recommendation, and we will do it from the overall point of view of the student. We will talk about the academics, we'll speak about the extracurricular and how they are in this community and in the larger community of New Canaan and the kinds of things they do. Hopefully, I think I can speak for all of us. We've worked with your students for 4 years, and we hopefully know them, and they should come to us and speak to us about that letter of recommendation if there's certain things that they would like to be highlighted in that. Okay. And now Lori will speak about scores.
So the last S of STARS is scores. Some of your children may have completed their testing this past spring, and some may still be completing, and that's absolutely okay. And also, if your son or daughter is unsure if they should do any more tests, they could easily hop in our offices and ask as well. But how does the scores actually get to the colleges? Your child will need to request his or her standardized scores online and request that they be sent to the schools that he or she is applying to. So if it's SATs that they're sending, they need to go on to College Board. The website is right online, or if it's ACT, right on ACT.org. It's so important that they do this about 3 weeks before the first deadline is advisable, because they send them in batches. And as soon as the scores get sent to the schools, they sit in their database or up in cyberspace, and as soon as their application gets there, then they'll match to whatever pieces are there into their application file. And it's also important to remember all the aspects of STARS that we talked about. It doesn't matter what gets there first, it all eventually comes together, and it's most important that your son or daughter's application is there by the deadline. Now, many schools will want to see all scores of the SATs, for example, but rest assured the majority of schools will pluck, meaning they'll take the highest of each section and just report that score. And some schools super score the ACT, but you don't need to worry so much about that. And also, some schools are score optional, and this will be discussed with your child individually as it doesn't apply to all of you, but if your son or daughter is holding back their score optional, or is unsure, this will be discussed at the senior appointment, because we want to set them up with what is going to be the best route for them. So those are important things on scores, and now I'd like to introduce Sue Carroll, who's going to be talking about college rep visits.
Good morning. As I speak, Michigan State is down in the College and Career Center talking to students who are interested in Michigan State. Visits began yesterday, and we have probably, I like to bring my audio-visual aids because this is how many we're hosting so far. There's over 165 schools that have been added to the roster, and I added 3 more yesterday. So the schools are posted, their visit schedule is posted on Naviance and also on the New Canaan High School webpage, on the home page, and also on the school counseling page. The people that come to visit us are usually the first reads of the application. So it's an amazing opportunity for our seniors to sit at the table with the person who's going to read their essay and ask more directed questions, more specific questions about the colleges in which they are interested. The visits are a half-hour long. They're scheduled on the half hour so that a student would not miss an entire class. The students have to ask permission of teachers to come to the visit. And if for some reason they can't attend a visit, perhaps there's a chemistry test or something of the ilk, then we have college regret forms. So before the college rep comes, they can come into our office, the student can fill out a regret form, and we will make sure that the college rep gets that regret form, and it will serve as another point of interest, which is important, especially if it's a smaller college. But as I always say, if they come in after the college rep has left the building, I say that's like Elvis leaving the building, but they don't know who Elvis is, so I laugh by myself. As I mentioned, 165 colleges from Plymouth State to Princeton, so we are quite blessed. The kids are perfectly well behaved. They do ask very good, insightful questions. They don't have to get particularly dressed up if there's a particular college coming, although I tell them it's not wise to wear a Colgate shirt to a Lehigh visit. I do make them take off their baseball caps so the reps can see them. But we're very, very blessed that colleges care enough about our students and are so interested in them. And there's a college for everyone. You look at the list, you'll see what I mean. Also in the College and Career Center, we're very busy this time of year with mock interviews. We're happy to have a one-on-one interview with students who are preparing to interview for a particular college in earnest. So all they have to do is come in and make an appointment with me, and we're happy to do that. Last but not least, I invite you all to follow the College and Career Center on Facebook and on Twitter. You don't have to actually get a Twitter account, and you don't ever have to post anything, but at least you can follow. And it's a very good way of getting information very quickly. Most of the information that we post will later show up on the monthly school guidance update, which is posted on the school counseling webpage. But this is a very immediate way of finding about scholarship information, perhaps gap year information, and different things that will pertain to especially your senior. So I invite you to follow us on those different social media pages. It's an exciting time in your kids' lives, and to talk about how you can help control the nerves and chaos is Susan Lindsay.
Cindy did not ask the question, I don't think. How many of you have been through this once before? Anybody twice before? Okay. The rest of you, those are the people you want to go to coffee with. Those are the people you want to take your walk with. You may switch your cocktail party crowd to those people. And the reason I say that is that we've all had our experienced parents come to us and say, yes, there's a lot to do. Yes, we know it's an unnerving process in some ways, but it always works out. It always works out. And we were saying to our seniors in these senior English classes, when their eyes are getting wider and wider as we're giving them all this information, which they need, that students come back to us and say, I'm so glad I didn't get into that school because I'm so happy where I am. So they're resilient around this. So I get to close us before we ask you to ask us questions with what I call the hard part. This year I wanted to start with an article that we saw from Forbes, just a quote that I thought was we all thought was really relevant. And this writer said, it takes a lot of self-restraint to enter this phase of your child's life. He or she is coming into adulthood, but still depends on parental support, is expected to make a huge personal decision, but based on family conditions, and looks forward to independence, but may not yet have the tools to use it wisely. So what is your role? What can you do? I'm assuming, and I know this about you, that your heart is in the right place on this. You know you can't do the applications, you can't write the essay, you can't take the standardized tests. And a lot of the time, you may not even get them to listen to your opinion anymore. But we understand, we feel the same way. You want them to get it done, you want them to get it done well, we all do. We know how tough it can be. We've been through it as counselors, as Cindy said, thousands of times, and many of us with our own children, which was probably harder. We empathize and we sympathize, but we do know that this is another opportunity for them to start to show their independence and fully embrace their responsibility. So just a couple of tips from us, and we know that you know this in your hearts. It just sometimes gets hard to remember when you're all in the middle of it. I know it was for me. Try not, as much as you're tempted, to talk about the college process every minute of every day, or even many hours of every day. The wisest counselor of one of my own children made us in the junior meeting think forward to a year from then when our student would not be with us anymore, and whether we would have wanted to take all that time talking about college or going out for ice cream. So it's not as simple as that, we know, but keep in mind that they will be gone and they will be somewhere a year from now. So we think that that's important. If they're really reluctant and you know you need to check in with them, we talk about setting aside a time on Sunday or Thursday night or something, which might be a time when you can sort of catch up with them on the process. And then, this is the hardest part, you need to let it go and act as if you're confident they're going to get it done, because you are, right? Right? This could be a time when wherever you go with them, people are asking them, where are you applying to college? You know, your well-meaning relatives, friends. I don't think people mean it to put them on guard, but it's a tough question for them. They can feel anxious, and we find that some may start to do different things. They may start to show some cracks in their armor, and some not want to make any decisions. They can avoid the topic entirely, and we promise you we will chase them down if they do. But we find that if the calmer you can stay in the process, the calmer they can stay in the process. So even if you don't feel calm, try to appear it. You can help them get organized and break things down to doable pieces. You can do these things up here to help them, helping them send scores. That's an okay job. You can help them get organized. I think that this third one is really, really important because we see a lot of worry on their part that they're going to let you down, right? Try to embrace all the schools that they're applying to. Help avoid making admission to that one perfect school sort of the be-all and end-all of their young life. It's okay to do early decision, but they may not get in and the world will go on. We find that they are very resilient when a deferral or a denial comes. We always give them a few days to grieve, but then we go to plan B, as Cindy always calls it. And I think that it's really interesting to watch how quickly they rebound, okay? I think somebody's talked about this earlier. If they do apply early, they may want to focus all their energies on that particular school. But there is nothing worse than on December 15th getting a deferral or a denial and having to do a lot of applications over Christmas break. It's impossible from our standpoint because transcripts, nobody's here to send all of that stuff. So be sure that we've talked to them about this, that they're juggling at the same time their other applications with their early. And finally, probably most importantly, remember that we are here to help. Please call us with questions, concerns, and we'll walk through with you whatever your child is doing. As Cindy said, we have many, many years of college admissions experience, and we always work as a team. Mrs. Granite, Mrs. Pocha, Mrs. Keneally, and we have the vast resources of the College and Career Center. So we're going to do everything possible to support your son or daughter in the process, and we talk always about fit, and we know that you will support us and them in that process. So now we want to open up to questions. Hi, I have some questions. Good. So here.
Transfers, like you said, is there a cost per college? Do they bring a check? How much is it?
There's no cost. Yeah, there used to be, but electronic submission has made it easier.
Can you repeat the question?
The question was there any cost to send transcripts? There was no cost to send transcripts. The question is the student notified if a teacher recommendation has been uploaded and sent? I think, go ahead, through their Naviance account, I believe they can follow that. And it will show whether if the materials are sent. Once your child sends their application, a few days later, a couple weeks later, the colleges will also give you that information as to what's still needed in an application if things are missing. As long as their application is there by deadline, there's no issue if a rec hasn't gotten there yet or our materials haven't gotten there yet. So I wouldn't worry about it. Usually if kids have hit submit on their application, 2 days before November 1st, the schools aren't going to be telling them that everything is there right away. They're going to be uploading materials in batches of things. So you may not hear right away whether everything is there. They never hold it against a child if it's a piece of material that's not theirs to have sent. So don't worry about that. Yes, the student will know. Yes, in the back.
Question for Sue or counselors. Regarding when the colleges come to visit here, it's not a one-on-one thing for that half hour, is it? Or how?
Depends on the college. Sometimes it's just me in the rec. my witty repartee fills a whole half hour. No, we're very, it depends on the college. For example, last year, surprise, surprise, Indiana University drew 56 of our seniors in a visit.
How do you make an impression with 56 kids on the college?
Well, I have to say that that large crowd is usually with a large public university, and that large public university is less interested in the impression. But if it's a smaller school, really most of the visits are 10 to 12 kids around the table, and it's literally a conversation. It's marvelous to witness. So the kids will get an email if the college is on their prospective list. They'll get an email from their guidance counselor inviting them to the visit. They go back onto Navion's, they RSVP for the visit, so I'll know how many chairs to have. And then we also take attendance and send that off to Mrs. Lapola, the only person in the building I'm afraid of. So we do take attendance.
Okay, down this way. Green shirt.
If a child takes a standardized test in the fall, like October, but wants to apply early, the window there of 3 or 4 weeks, they won't know their results, so they go straight to the college.
Yes. If your child is testing in October, for most colleges will accept October scores for November 1st and November 15th deadlines. We ask that they send them directly because, once again, if your child does worse than previous tests, colleges don't care. They want the best scores. You have to think this is a business for them. They want the highest scores that they can get. So they're still going to take the highest scores. So do not worry about it. And we always counsel kids, you don't need to wait to see the scores to send them if they've already sent previous scores. They can send their applications, and in the application say October with no scores next to it, so the colleges know there are more scores to come, so they can identify that. Okay, I better go over here.
You may have covered this, I was a few minutes late, but, sorry. The recommendations for early decision, like when do the students need to what date should they ask people writing recs to get those in by, let's say November 1st date? How soon in advance?
3 to 4 weeks prior to the deadline.
Okay.
So anytime now. We counsel the kids, go back to your teachers that you asked in the spring and touch base with them again, so.
Okay.
If you're applying to an ED, does applying for early action to other schools diminish your chances? Do they ask what other schools you've applied early action to? Right? So if you have an ED and maybe you are applying a couple of EAs, right? It doesn't matter?
The question is, if you're applying ED somewhere and then EA in other schools, does it matter to the ED school that you've applied EA somewhere?
First of all,
Okay, first of all, if there is a question on, I don't think it's on the common application, but on an individual school's application, where else are you applying? That's an optional question. Your child does not have to do that. And in point of fact, it's on there, not so much for them to say, ooh, well, they're applying too, more for the college to see the kind of schools that they're in the same pool as. But no, I mean, there isn't going to be, colleges don't share that information. The only time they might share information is if a student is applying ED and maybe has a certain, I'm going to use athletic talent, then they may, admission dean to admission dean, go, oh, we got this great, US soccer player who's coming in. And so if your child, who was the US soccer player, had decided to be clever and apply ED to both schools, they'd be called out and the application would be gone. But no, there is no downside at all to applying ED and EA. But you must remember that if your child is accepted ED, that is where they are going. They cannot turn around and say, oh, I don't think I want to go there anymore. ED is a binding commitment on the child, on the school, and actually on the high school, because we as a high school have to sign a form that says we are agreeing that they are applying ED. So it can come back to not just haunt the child, it can haunt the high school.
The other piece to that is there are some schools who have restrictive early action agreements. So they're saying you can apply EA to me, but not anywhere, not ED somewhere else. So you do have to make sure that you understand their policies, and colleges spell that out. There are very few schools who do that, but you do want to be very careful about those.
Students should really read carefully the plan under which they're applying. So they should go to the college's website and see what each of those plans means so they're clear. And if they have a question, they're welcome to come to us and we'll take a look at that wording also.
Okay, I'm back over there.
In the realm of the same early action, early decision, if you're applying ED somewhere, there's other programs that have ED too, but you need to submit to that school prior to the ED2 because of scholarships or other things, are you able to can you change your application? How hard is it to go, I'm coming in early, I'm coming in regular because I want to get under the window of a scholarship, didn't get your A choice early decision 1, how is it easy to contact the school and say, well, now I want to be ED2 to your school? Is that easy to do?
Yeah, it's not much of a problem. And more early schools are not giving decisions before the deadlines for ED2 schools, but that ED1 school is your first commitment. So if once that comes in, the point is you withdraw all other applications. But you can't apply ED1 to 2 schools.
No, if you get denied the ED1.
Yes.
But you've already submitted as a regular because you're under an umbrella.
Sure, you can just contact the school and then say, there's actually a form online that then you submit saying ED2, that you're going to ED2, and that will make the connection and change the thing. Over here.
I have 2 questions. One is when you submit the scores by a college board, do they automatically submit, like the school wants super or all, they automatically do that? We don't have to know that when it's doing it?
You don't need to know whether they're super scoring or whatever, no, just
Second
sending.
question was, I know some schools track interest and some don't. Is there a list or anything, or we just sort of have to dig for that information?
I think that's a digging kind of thing, isn't it? They usually are pretty open about saying that.
Yeah, I mean, there's expressing interest and then there's expressing too much interest. I mean, you know, there are people who think that by contacting repeatedly that that's a good thing. It isn't. But smaller schools tend to look at interest a little bit more. That's a gross generalization, obviously, but they can. They have smaller numbers of applications. So that's why we think it's a great idea when the reps are here for them to come if it's on the top of their list. Obviously, they can't come to all of the school's reps visits, but that we find, I think some schools, if your student has some schools on the list that we know are particularly interested in tracking interest, we'll talk about that too. Does that answer?
I saw somewhere on the Common App, I think my daughter was mentioning that they request certain schools say there's optional recommendations. I'm questioning, is that something, I mean, optional is not optional from what I'm hearing?
So we usually say no more than 4 total recommendations. So the counselor is 1, 2 teacher recommendations usually. The 4th one is the 4th one, and that could go a lot of different ways. It could be a student who's applying for an art program, and the art teacher is very important in that process. So that, you know, so you might have 2 academic teachers and 1 art teacher. It could be the student who had a great job and that person knows them as in a different light than a teacher would. So that may be it. So there's 2 different processes in that. If it's a school faculty member, where they're in Naviance. If it's someone outside of a school faculty person or a retired person, then they are going to probably apply on the Common App under that other recommenders. They'll submit an email address for that person to upload, get a link, and then upload an application through Common App. But if it is Naviance, if it's a faculty member, it'll be through Naviance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Back over here.
It's back onto the
recommendation. If all your schools only require a counsellor and one other teacher, do you have to ask two teachers?
No. I'll do the easy questions.
What do you do? Which one goes?
So this is the the question is, if you have two teacher recommendations and the school only wants you to send one, and there are a few schools, Villanova being one of them, that only will accept one teacher recommendation. Now, we have told the kids this process is complicated, but in Naviance, they have to specify which teacher is sending their rec to Naviance. So there is a process in Naviance now where they can they invite a teacher and then list the schools they want the rec sent to. So this is a process that goes on throughout the semester. They may have 3 or 4 schools now, and then have to go back and ask for the teacher's rec to be sent to more schools. So we've advised the kids on that. So it is a little complicated, but they should talk to us about it. Anything else to be said on that? Okay.
While the student might not see that letter of recommendation, does the counselor see it, that they might have an impact on which one is chosen if it's a one-rec school?
No, we don't see the recommendations. They're all confidential recommendations. We have a general sense, and usually, we really will think in terms of the child wants to study physics, that physics teacher's recommendation is going to probably be more important than the U.S. history teacher's rec that they've also sent. So sometimes it might be subject specific, that we would say. In the back.
Can you review the Common App with the students, how they filled it out, so that they know they did it correctly?
Do we review the Common Application? We review it when they have questions on certain parts of it. We don't go through the whole application with them. We're going to give that job to you because that would be really daunting for us to do that for every one of our students. But certainly as they have questions, and kids do this all the time, they come with their laptops open like this, and they're like, what do I say here? So we're really good at that piece of that stuff. You have one. Okay. Go ahead. One more.
You talked about the linking of the Common App and Naviance, so I assume that's somehow intuitive, but there are many southern schools that do not use the Common App. So does the magic of Naviance go away? How does that all happen?
No, we use Naviance for every single school. If they don't use the Common Application, it is not a problem. They are still linked to Naviance, and we do still send through Naviance. It is a miracle how it all works,
But we did tell them in the senior meetings they should open a Common App account, whether they have a Common App school or not, because that helps the matching process.
Does that stand true for the Coalition app as well?
What does that go through Naviance? Yes, the
Coalition,
Coalition
yes.
application does go through Naviance as well.
I read somewhere where it did it.
Yeah, that was their first year. They did do it, and we didn't like that, so they changed it.
If you have visited a school, is there any disadvantage to not attending the meeting here? I mean, is that something they hold,
So the
that's
question is,
important to them?
if you visited the school, do you still also then need to attend the session? No one want to take that? No,
I
okay.
think if the student has further specific questions about a program, then yes, but I think that that might be one of those things that you don't want to come to the session, but maybe you come in and fill out a regret form as a further cement on the deal. But you don't have to come to every single visit. But if you do have any questions, that's the time to ask them.
Right. Follow-up?
Does an early action acceptance require an early response, or can you still respond in the spring when you have more information about other schools?
So you've been accepted early action. Do you need to respond earlier?
Right, or can you wait?
No, not usually. You still have, early action is non-binding. You can wait till May 1st. There might be some housing deposits you might want to put down just to get the early housing options, but otherwise, no, it does not. And you will get that back before May 1st if you suddenly made a different decision. But no, there's not any requirement on that. Questions?
Going back to the other question, wouldn't it be helpful if you visited a school if you're not necessarily seeing the person who's actually reading your application? So maybe to go to the session at the school, they face.
absolutely,
Repeat the
obviously,
question.
Would it be a smart move if a student has gone to a tour and maybe an info session at a college, and then come to the college visit here at the high school so they could touch base with the actual first read of the application? Yes, that's a perfect world, but we have students who have to go to academic classes here. So if there's something going on in the classroom that clearly is more important than the visit, they can come in and fill out a regret form. And perhaps I can also then give them the email address of the rep so that if there is a pertinent question, they can pursue it online.
In the back there?
Question regarding Naviance being, connected to the Common App. We've run across a couple of issues where there's something that shows Naviance is saying something's required, but you go to the college and it's not required. It's recommended, but it's not required. How is that going to get reconciled when you're hitting an application? Subject tests being one of them.
Yeah, you should always go to the college's website for final information when there's a disparity. I wouldn't trust that. I think Naviance tries their best to keep up to that, but colleges change their policies every minute of every day. I swear, it drives us crazy. But those will be the most up to date as to what's required.
I'm a little bit fuzzy on the whole early action thing and what's the point or what's the advantage. I get early decision, but what's the advantage of early action versus regular decision?
Yeah, I think early action used to give be given advantage to students, but nowadays I would say it doesn't give that much of an advantage, but it does help kids want to hear early and get some pressure off of them to feel better about things. I think some colleges like that demonstrated interest to some degree, but I don't think since they get so many applications early, they probably don't give it as much weight as they used to. And so I think if your child is not ready to apply early action, that is fine. Many colleges do fill a good portion of their class with early, but they can't really predict who's actually going to come, and that's been a problem for the colleges at this point. Sure, go ahead.
So several years ago, I asked, okay, so several years ago, I actually asked a dean of admission why you would have this early action. This was a college that didn't have early action, so I felt I was getting a better kind of read on this. And what he said to me was, well, supposedly the students who do apply early and do get an early offer are more likely to enroll in that school.
So they give it a little, so
Yeah,
in that
so
sense then,
it's like, oh, you wanted me, you loved me, therefore I'm probably gonna love you back.
the question is. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate all of your attention today.